And we welcome you to our latest edition of Inside the Orange. Stephen Fonte, Paulie Sibilia with you. And this week we are pleased to be joined by Mark Trumbo, the Assistant Athletics Director for Student Athlete Engagement at Syracuse University. Mark, great to have you on. Great to meet you. How are things today?
Thanks for having me on. I'm having a great day. It's a nice, warm, sunny day as always in Syracuse, so good to be here.
As always.
As always.
As always. So I guess let's start with this, Mark. Tell us what you do. What do you do on a daily basis at Syracuse University?
Yeah, so if I gave the short and sweet answer, my goal is to help our student athletes and teams reach their personal and professional goals. And sometimes that's very personal to the student athlete. Sometimes that's working with teams in general and their leadership development and their goals and culture as a unit. And it's helping the overall organization of Syracuse Athletics to create a student athlete experience that's unlike any other.
So I guess the follow-up question there would be, how did you end up here? I was going through your bio and I see that, you've held a lot of different jobs over the course of your career, and you're still a young guy, but, former golf coach, and you worked at a minor league baseball team, and, you were at Ball State. You've been a lot of places. Tell us about your journey and how you ended up here at Syracuse University.
Yeah, and I feel like our journeys are all unique, and we have these lived experiences that aided into that, and I definitely fall into that category. So when I was a young guy in high school and people would come up to me and say, hey, what do you want to do with your life? I really didn't know until I met my parents' financial planner. And I remember sitting playing video games in the living room, and this guy in this brand new BMW pulled up in the driveway. I'm like, who's this guy? And my parents are like, oh, this is Steve, our financial planner. He helps, get us ready for retirement, make money, and make sure we don't retire when we're 90 years old. And so he comes in, he's funny, he's engaging. And, I finally catch up with him. I'm like, hey, what do you do, or how do you do this? And he's like, well, if you're good with people and you're good at math and this is yours. This is something you could definitely do. And he had me sold in 2 seconds. So I went to college to do just that, finished college, and 6 months into my financial planning career, I did an absolute 180 career move and went back to college. So it's something that I've realized, and it's probably what's really driven me to work in this field, is I had a really false sense of a reality of what success looked like and what fulfillment meant for me. And I thought it was money. I thought it was cars. I thought it was what country club you belong to, but in reality, it really didn't mean those things. And my interest of being back in college athletics and doing it for 14 years is because I really want to help these people at formidable times in their lives as they make decisions of what happens next and what they're doing while they're here. I want to make sure I'm that voice within them that helps them figure out what's next. What are they doing now to help them be prepared for what's next? And sometimes it's pro sports, right? And I remember having a really cool conversation with former men's basketball player, Elijah Hughes. Awesome guy, really engaging. I remember he went out to a, kind of like a pre-NBA camp thing out at Indianapolis. And he came back and he said, one of the things they did for us to help us with the draft is we had to interview, mock interviews with teams. And I said, well, tell me, what was that like? What did they talk to you about? And he said, you know what? They pulled up a video from my freshman year in high school going through the handshake line. And they caught that I missed somebody, and they asked me about that. And he's like, I didn't know what I would have to, they would do so much research on me. And I said, yeah, whether you want to work in the corporate world or finance world, or if you want to go work in professional sports, you are going to have to talk to an employer. Someone is going to be someone you have to answer to, and you want to make sure you're doing your work to make sure you put yourself in the best position to be successful. So that's where I get my juice. That's where I get my fire, is helping student athletes with that area of life, and where that light bulb comes on. It's a pretty cool experience to be a part of.
You say it's engagement with the athletes. Where does it begin for you and the athlete? Do recruits come to you and you explain to them that, hey, this is what we can get you and where we can get you, or is this something that starts later in the student athletes?
No, totally. You called it, recruits. As soon as our coaches are bringing recruits on campus, I'm usually one of the stops where they like to sit there. And trust me, sometimes it feels like it's a pitch to the parents as much as it is to the student athlete. Because this is the stuff as a parent. I have 3 kids of my own. This is the stuff where I was bringing my child of who's going to take care of my kid? the stuff hopefully that we're providing for them in our space, career development, leadership development, social responsibility, civic engagement, all these pieces, to really help and mold you as a young man, a young woman, a young person. This is the stuff that would really hook me. So it's a cool experience to be a part of their journey so long. And do I feel like we've landed recruits because of what I've pitched? Probably not. But it is cool when sometimes you meet with sophomores and juniors and they finally get to your campus and like, hey, I remember you from my recruiting visit. And it's really special to kind of create those bonds early, and it lasts all the way through. They graduate, they become alumni of our university. And one of my best friends is Don McPherson, who everybody who's an Orange fan knows that name pretty well. And he's a huge acolyte for what we do here and championing the work. So it's really great to meet people in all walks of life, whether before they get here and long after they've been here.
You're in charge of getting them to where they need to be afterwards. Has NIL changed things in your role? Do they come to you and ask you, hey, what am I going to make here while I'm at Syracuse?
So NIL for us is just pivoting what we've already been doing. We've been teaching student athletes about personal branding, financial literacy, entrepreneurship, business, branding, like all those things we've already been doing before NIL came into picture. So for us, it's a pivot. One of my catchphrases that I use here quite often is called NIL is not a 4-year thing, it's a 40-year thing. It's just a difference of perspective. If you want it to be a cash grab, get it while you can, that's great. But it also could be something that if you play your cards right, it could also help you lead into a career, right? Partner with the right brands, and ultimately maybe you start working with them. It could be something that could really help them in a long-term and short-term way. But definitely that carrot dangling in front of their face a little bit earlier is helpful. It catches their attention a little bit more, as opposed to sometimes you had a hard time doing. But I have found NIL to be a great space for us to do even more education with them and do a lot of good work.
You shared that story about Elijah Hughes. That was a great story. And you mentioned that, for some of these guys, the goal is professional sports, whether you're talking NBA or WNBA or NFL. Only a small fraction of guys make it. Even a smaller fraction will actually stick there and make a living out of it. They've got to have a backup plan. Do you have any success stories? I'm sure you do. Anything come to mind for you, though, of somebody that, you helped develop that backup plan, and then when professional sports didn't work out, they came back to you and said, you know what, Mark, thanks for, putting me down this path because, I'm doing X, Y, or Z, today in my professional life. And, I thought I'd be lost without football or basketball, but now I'm on the right path.
Yeah, and I think I think this is the beautiful thing about Syracuse is I'm not the only one who our athletes are coming back to after their professional career saying thank you to, which I credit the entire department, from our compliance, our academic, our sports information people. Sue Etson gets way more kudos than I ever will, and she deserves them. She deserves all the flowers that she gets. But it's a group of us who all care about them that makes this place more special than most. And so, yeah, I definitely have had a few people who have come back and said, hey, Mark, like this piece helped me, or you made this connection for me, which helped lead me to this path. And the way we try to frame things for them, which I hope helps them, is that it's not an and/or proposition. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can do both. You can have alignment and be prepared for both. And you could use the most upfront stars in these sports to share that with your Serena Williams, your LeBron James, and your Tom Brady's to say, hey, do they do anything outside of their sport? Yeah, well, LeBron has a production company and Tom Brady has TB12 and Serena does all kinds of commercials, right? They have brands outside of their sport. So they have a future outside of when that ball stops bouncing. So sometimes it's using those examples for them to share. One of my favorite alumni we've had here who knows your space pretty well, Cam Lynch, football. Yeah. And he is the model, right? He is the one that you want to get in front of your student athletes as much as possible because he tasted both. He's tasted what it looks like to be a professional athlete, but he did it so well. Like when the NFLPA says, hey, we're going to offer this, I'll do it. Hey, we're going to try this. Oh, I'll do it, right? He took advantage of every possible thing he could do, and which has led him to being a budding star in that field. So I'm grateful to be here and be in this space, and we're lucky that we work with multiple people here, and it's not just me who wants to see these athletes be successful.
It's funny that Cam Lynch was that same way on the team too. It was, hey, we need special teams. I'll do it. He was the exact same way on the field.
Yeah, awesome guy.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great point you bring up, Paulie. I mean, Zaire Franklin was like that.
Yeah.
You can tell the guys, I think, who are going to succeed in whatever they're doing, whether it's football or off the field, as you said, when the ball stops bouncing. So, Mark, one of, again, looking into your background and whatnot, I know that one of your biggest contributions to Syracuse University is considered the S Project. Can you fill us in on what the S Project is?
Yeah, so the S Project is our umbrella, right? That's the brand behind the life skills program, as we generically would call that in other circles. But we have a focus of personal development, leadership development, civic engagement, professional readiness, or these were the buckets that we really pour into our student athletes to help them to be the best athlete, student, friend, brother, sister, fill in the blank, right? We're trying to hit every identity and hat that they could possibly wear. And I'm a big person. If you ever come by my office or if you hear me in a team meeting, you'll hear a phrase called person over player. Or you also hear something called honesty for greatness. And there's many times, if we call spade a spade here, sometimes I'll share things with them or be a truth teller to them that no one's told them. No one's been that honest with them. No one said, hey, like maybe we should look at other things. And it's their first experience with that. But just like in leaders, right? You can't be everybody's friend, but you can gain their respect. And so from a student athlete perspective, the S Project is hopefully a framework or a guidebook to help them progress in all those areas that we feel, when you become a full-fledged adult, when you graduate college, we wanted you to have a great foundational baseline in a lot of key areas. And we want to make sure that Syracuse University and the athletics department made things available to you when they could, because being a student athlete means that your time is unique and you may not have as much available to you as maybe a student not competing in college athletics. So it does take a specific type of program to make sure that these things work within their schedule. So yeah, that's the S Project. We kicked that off, and it's been a great program. It's been modeled by other universities. So we're lucky to say that we've been kind of carrying the torch there. But we hope, just like you said, right, we hope that at the end of their timeline here, they look back at Syracuse and say the S Project was pivotal for me to be a part of and help me be the person I am today.
Before you took this current position and were promoted within the university, you served as an academic coordinator for the men's and women's soccer teams, for cross country and track and field for 3 years or so before you took this current position. What was it like working day in and day out and getting to know those athletes and working so closely with them day in and day out for a few years?
Yeah, no, I love that part, working with Coach Mack and Coach Fox, Coach Bell, Coach Hagelin, and even the women's soccer staff I had here with Coach Wooden. You develop some really tight special bonds with them really quickly, because there is that built-in need, right? You need me to help you with the school part, and whether it's classes or tutorial support or helping you maybe change majors. And your coaches are always trying to find practice blocks at work where most people can be there and not have a lot of practice conflicts. And when they're traveling and on the road, we don't want to miss as much class. But the cool things is, sometimes you get to travel with them. One of my special experiences was with the men's soccer team when we went to ACC championships and being part of the Final Four there. And just, you get to play cards on the bus with them. You get to eat dinner with them. You get to learn more about their families. Especially on a men's soccer, has such an international flavor, right? So, how special it is when their parents come over from Germany and England and all these other places. You basically become part of their extended family, and you don't want to ever take it for granted. And I never did. I always wanted to make sure they knew that they had someone to be in their corner and fight for them and be a supporter for them. If it's just to be a cheerleader, I'll do that. If you need someone to advocate you for a class, I'll do that. You need help finding a job after school, I'll help you do that. So you try to be as useful and valuable to your team as you can. But there's some special bonds that definitely accrue in there that I've kept for years, even long after the academic advising world. But I definitely appreciate those times and what those people do. The academic professionals in our Stevenson Center are top notch and some of the best that there is in the country.
How How has the transfer portal affected your job? How hard is it for you to find a guy that's coming in from a different school and you've got to find a matching, program for them to fit what they were doing at other schools?
It's not getting any easier, if that's what you're asking. It's as easy it is to kind of maneuver, and as they see their friends at other schools doing it, and so you're definitely seeing an uptick in that. But this is where clarity and expectations up front is super important in the process. Even before, if someone even were to ever leave Syracuse and go to a different institution, or someone is coming in, you just have to have some really honest and clear conversations with them. Like, hey, you were doing this major here. It may look a little different at your next school, or what you came in with may look a little different here. But ultimately, it's really incumbent upon us to find out what's their interests, what are their passions, what do they love to do, and maybe we are a better fit here than we were at their previous school. And sometimes that works out, right? Maybe they're in an academic program that they didn't really like at their previous institution, and they come here and they find a better fit. So not only is it a better fit athletically, it's a better fit academically. But sometimes it's hard. Sometimes, especially in a mid-year, you got a lot smaller time frame to figure these things out. If someone's transferring between academic semesters, as it were, summer gives you a little more time. But ultimately, you're constantly just trying to put the student athlete at the center of it and just saying what's best for them. Like, what do they need? How can we make sure we give them the best experience and put them in a program that they enjoy and want to be a part of?
I think there's a misconception out there, Mark, that, athletes generally don't care about their academics. You do this every day. How much do the student athletes that you're working with care about what's going on in the classroom and care about setting themselves up for success academically moving forward? And how much can that help with their athletic performance, that when you're doing good academically and you're all caught up and you don't have those, concerns hanging over your head, I would imagine it helps you perform better on the athletic playing field.
I think you could step into this job right now. You're preaching all of our touching points. I think that's one of the proverbs right there. Going back to the recruiting space, right? I still do it now. Well, sometimes I'll meet with a recruit. We'll go out to the practice field and I'll say, listen, I just want you to watch practice for 5 minutes. And then I want you to tell me, who do you think the best player is? And so we'll sit there for a few and I'll let them observe. And then I'll say, okay, give me 3 numbers, because they don't even usually know their names yet. Okay, number 10, number 32, and number 17. And I kid you not, 99% of the time, one of them is our best student. And I think that's something that I learned from one of our awesome graduates in the cross country team, part of our national championship team, Marty Haher. Love that guy, right? Pre-med, all the grades that you could ever want. One of the best runners ever been through this program. One of the things that he taught me, I asked him, I said, Marty, when did things go from good to great for you? Like, when did the jump happen? And he said, it wasn't that I did more, it was I chose to do less. Meaning, he really created clarity on what he wanted from this experience. He wanted to be a great student. He wanted to be a great athlete. And he wanted to have some really strong relationships. Anything that got in the way of that, he let it go. And that's something that we try to help our student athletes. Like, there's a certain GPA you need to be eligible. There's a certain number of credits you need to be eligible. But that's the minimum. Nobody here is striving at Syracuse for the minimum. And I think what we try to do is help them understand that clarity will give you more opportunities, because clarity gives you time. If you realize that you don't need to do 6 hours of Netflix on the weekend and binge watching shows, and you could use that time to, all right, for 1 hour, I'm going to do some film study. For another hour, I'm going to do some studying because I have an assignment due next week, right? All of a sudden, you're building more time into your day that maybe you didn't if you weren't being intentional with it. So I think our Syracuse student athletes are top notch. It's one of the best institutions that there is. So you have to be on top of your P's and Q's here. And the support staff around it remind them of that. And we do everything we can to set up a structure where they can be successful. But we got some awesome student athletes here, really care about their schoolwork, really committed on campus. So you'll see people in clubs, and they'll be in business fraternities. So you see them very involved, not just even in athletics, which is a great sign.
And it's easier to care when the people you're working with genuinely care. And I've only known you for 20 minutes here, but it seems like you genuinely care about the job that you do and about these student athletes. And I guess so with that in mind, Mark, I mean, how fulfilling is this job for you? Because again, I can tell you enjoy what you're doing. You have a passion for it.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't be here this long if I didn't. And if you all don't mind, I do have a story that I think really will illustrate your question really well. And so you all mentioned that I work with cross country and track. My first year here, I met a string bean freshman, super quiet cross country kid by the name of Colin Benny. And Colin Benny was one of those guys who came in with a bajillion credits from high school because he was so smart. So he had all these AP credits. And just with all the different seasons you can have in track and field cross country, you can have 3 different seasons. So you have cross country, indoor track, outdoor track. There's probably a good chance you might redshirt one of those seasons. So a lot of our runners will be here for 5 years, not 4. So I told Colin his freshman year, like, hey man, we play our cards right. You could walk out of this place with a master's for free as a scholarship student athlete. Like, let's do that. And and he was on track, and he got involved with our student athlete advisory committee, which is a leadership group of all of our sports. So I got to know him a little bit more there, but he's still like, if you know Colin, he's very reserved, right? He was part of that group with Marty and Justin Knight. And so like he kind of took a backseat and let those guys be out front. And I'll tell you this. So my story about Colin is finishing up his master's program. This is his final year at Syracuse, and he had a final project for his class. And he said, hey, Mark, I got to interview people who have jobs doing what I want to do in my future. And I'm blown away. The whole time Colin's like, I'm going to law school. I'm like, all right, cool. And so when he comes in and says, hey, I want to do what you do, I'm blown away. And I don't have a huge tree, right? I don't have this huge coaching tree like a Coach Boeheim in terms of people who have gone on and coach. So I get excited. And so Colin comes in, he sits down, and I said, all right, Colin, where do you want to start? My history, what I do, my education, what makes sense? And Colin puts me right back on my seat really quickly. He says, hey, I don't want to do what you do. And I just kind of lost the air, right? And I thought, all right, you want me to connect you to an alumni who's a lawyer, something like that. And Colin knows, no, I want to interview you. And I said, what's the deal here, man? And he says, I don't want to do what you do, but I want to feel the way you feel when I go to my job. And I sat there for a minute and I just thought, this guy doesn't necessarily care that I help athletes with resumes, that I help captains be better captains, that I serve over 3,000 hours of community service in Syracuse. This guy gravitated towards me because he genuinely loved how I show up. And he wanted to make sure at his career, he loved where he showed up and how he showed up. So I say that because you asked, you're passionate about this. Why? That's why. Because when you can show up every day to a job and you don't have to change one iota of who you are to be great at it, you're in the right lane. The CEO of Yum Brands, he has a great quote that says, if you have to change who you are to be great at your job, change your job. And that's one of the things, if I could pass one thing along to athletes, I hope they get that from me, is that you may not do what I want to do, but I hope you get to experience life the way that I get to experience it because I love what I do every day.
I got to ask you a question because I was reading your resume and you talk about going to a job you love every day. You were at one time a golf coach.
Yeah.
How do you not pursue that? How do you walk away from that job and not want to do that for the rest of your life?
I think my wife wouldn't have liked it, to be honest with you. I spend as much time in the golf course, probably more than I should be already, but that was a unique job. I was actually in grad school in the high school right next to Ball State. They were looking for a golf coach, and I just threw my hat in the ring, didn't think anything about it, and they took me, and loved it. And I'll tell you what, my dad is a pastor, just retired. My mom was a teacher, and the best memories and conversations I ever had with my dad was on a golf course. And when I was coaching those high school guys, it took all those memories right back to me. I know golf is a unique sport, something that Syracuse Athletics doesn't have. I wish we did. I would have volunteered to be a coach of that team. But if you're a basketball coach, you're on the sidelines coaching. If you're a football coach, rarely can you be a coach of a sport where you can literally walk with them the entire time. Like between shots, the conversations that you have. Golf is a humbling sport, right? You can hit your best shot and the worst shot in a matter of 2 minutes. And so resiliency and character and all those great things that you're trying to instill in young people, golf was a great outlet for me to learn those skills, but also the bonds that I created with my dad and, friends of mine in the past and those high school kids when I had them. And that's why I think people fall in love with sports so much, is because I met with a recruit yesterday, guys, and she was asking me some questions, and I said, listen, you're not gonna sit here 10 years from now, 15 years from now and go, oh, I missed that history class, or I told them, like, you may not even say I miss playing in the game, because the big things that you are going to miss are the things that you never can replicate. You can play in an adult volleyball league. You can play in an adult flag football, basketball leagues. You can do that stuff, but what you can't do, you can't replace the locker room. You can't replace the 6-hour bus rides to Pitt. You can't replace the plane rides with your friends. Some of these guys have gone on to Italy to do foreign tours or go to Maui, go to these amazing destinations. You miss the bonds and relationships and the time you spent with them. So I think that's what high school golf gave to me. And that's why I wanted to get back into sports so much, for that mentoring component. It's a special place.
There's not many icebreakers you can have with Coach Boeheim. He was once a golf coach also. I mean, you've got an automatic in, right, with him if you're going to talk golf.
I'd love to get on the course with Coach one day. Maybe we could swap some coaching stories of how we used to do it. But it's funny. I remember sitting I think it was a letter winner dinner or something like that, and that was actually the first time I heard Coach was a golf coach, and I was like, oh wow, no wonder he likes to play golf. So that was a good nugget there. Good trivia question.
Mark, this has been great. You're a very impressive man, and SU is lucky to have you. Anything else about your job or about the university that you want to get across before we part ways today?
I really don't have. It's funny that you asked this. I always do. I make somebody else do the closing word when we end meetings. I think the one thing at the end of every program or workshop or whatever thing I do, and maybe I can do that with you guys. Why not? I always end with a quote. And I just say, hey, here's your quote for the day or quote for the week or whatever it is. And the one I used yesterday with the recruit that she liked a lot was, when you're born, you look like your parents. When you die, you look like your decisions. And I hope the decision you made coming to Syracuse is one that you will look back on and feel like that was one of the best decisions I ever made. And if that's the experience that we're giving them, then we hit a home run.
His final thought, I do a final thought on our show every day.
9,000 times better than yours.
Way better, yeah. Mine today was, if you're talking about the weather, you've got nothing to talk about.
That's a good one.
Mark's was a lot more profound than that.
Yes.
Mark, we're going to have to have you on again sometime. This was great. I love the quotes. I love the stories. I love how passionate you are about what you do. It's been a pleasure talking with you today. Enjoy your weekend, and hopefully we can talk again down the road.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Enjoy the day.
All right, that's Mark Trumbo. Again, it's our latest edition of Inside the Orange. Enjoy the rest of the week. We'll do it again next Thursday, everybody.